Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Alt-Centrism Central podcast. This is episode 10, I believe, and this is the first time ever that we're doing face cams. We have a special guest today. Our special guest is Mr. Spike Cohen, the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, and thank you for introducing me. I am Spike Cohen. I'm the Libertarian Party's vice presidential nominee, and I think he's going to have to mute when he's not.
Oh,
Yeah, the feedback's really bad when I. Okay. Thanks for introducing me. My name is Spike Cohen. I am the Libertarian Party's nominee for vice president, running alongside with my running mate, Joe Jorgensen, who's running for president. I'm a business owner who has been in owning businesses for over 20 years now. 3 years ago, I decided to focus my life full-time on spreading the message of liberty to a public that often hasn't heard our ideas. And to that end, I became the host of My Fellow Americans. I became the co-host of the Muddy Waters of Freedom, and I became the co-owner of Muddy Waters Media. And we have been using a very entertaining way of reaching out to people outside of liberty circles and bringing them into the message of liberty. To that end, I decided 7 months ago to run for the Libertarian Party's vice presidential nomination. And on the strength of my ability to bring people into the party and into the movement, the delegates saw fit to pair me with Joe Jorgensen. And now we are running a campaign for the White House to set America free and to remove the barriers that the Republicans and the Democrats have put forward in their exclusive control of government for over 160 years, which have made it more and more difficult for everyday Americans to thrive and to get ahead in life. And we are going to remove those barriers so that people can be freer and happier and live safer and healthier lives. And that's what we're doing.
excellent. And I can tell that you practice, just for this show. Just for the show, you practice. I appreciate it. Just for the show.
Like, I'll just wing it. But then once I knew I was going to be on the show, I have to nail.
Exactly, right? I mean, we're bigger than Joe Rogan, right? All right.
That's what I was told. So we'll see.
So we're going to start off this episode a little bit differently than usual. Today is actually a special day for my good friend Peyton, my co-host Peyton. We are going to sing him the happy birthday song because it is his birthday today. How old are you turning, Peyton? You an old man now?
Yeah, I'm actually turning 75.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The senior host.
Yeah, I'm going to be 19.
Nice. Wow. All right, let's sing him happy birthday. On the count of 3. 1, 2. Oh, you were just going to start, weren't you?
I was just going to start. I'm waiting for your
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Peyton. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
Is that I now know that there's a slight gap in the audio because you had to adjust yourself for. I thought I was syncing with you, and then you had to pull back because.
No, but we made it work though, so it came together in the end.
Perfect harmony, actually.
Yeah. So happy birthday, Peyton. That's how we're starting off today's episode. I have a list of questions for you, actually.
Sure.
We're going to start it off a little bit differently than usual. Yeah, lots of differences in this episode. If I can actually bring it up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game called Speed Questions. I don't like to use this word very often, but the politicians. I don't want to throw you in the same boat as them, but if you end up being the vice president, yeah. But politicians, they love to talk and talk and talk and talk, and we'll give you plenty of opportunity to talk. But for this right here, speed questions, you only get to answer yes or no. You get a total of 3. You can elaborate on 3 of them, or you can skip 3 of them. So, for example, you can elaborate on 1 and skip 2 for something like that. But if you do more than 3, then you don't get the no bullshit award, which will be on our website forever. You'll be glorified as a no bullshit politician. You think you can handle that?
About to find out. I don't know. This is tough because I am the king of elaborating on things. But let's do it. Let's do it, man.
All right. First question. Are you pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
How do I answer yes or no to this?
I know it's starting tough right off the bat. Well, you can. Well, the way that I phrased it. Okay. Yeah, the way that I phrased it, you could have had 3 answers there, but most of these are going to be yes or no.
Okay.
Do you believe our justice system works for everyone?
No.
Okay. Do you believe the government can be trusted to protect the environment?
No.
All right. Do you believe private entities can be trusted to protect the environment? Like any organization except the government.
I'm gonna have to elaborate. I believe
Okay.
that in a market set free, where we're able to actually litigate against people that pollute, then yes, they can be trusted to protect their own self-interest and not pollute because they don't want to be sued by us. Which the government, with the EPA, indemnifies people that do damage to the environment against being sued. So I would trust the market to sort that out.
Okay, excellent answer. So 1 elaboration so far. Next question. Should prostitution be legal?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. Do you support charter schools?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to elaborate, but yes.
We might give you a chance after this. We might loop back. Don't worry about it. Do you think there are limits to what can be done for the sake of national security?
Yes.
Okay. Good answer there. That was a trick question. No is not an acceptable answer for that one.
No is not an acceptable answer for anyone. Yeah, exactly.
Should businesses be allowed to discriminate by choosing which customers they serve and which they don't?
I have to elaborate again. The problem isn't the discrimination. The problem is that the government has set barriers on the market which entrench existing suppliers and providers so that they don't have competition. In a market set free, people should be able to discriminate, choose and who they wish to do business or not do business with as they wish, because in a market set free, you could have unlimited competitors providing to who needs it. And so if one provider or a series of providers would not be providing to consumers who need that product, then someone else could pop up and fill that market space. But because of the barrier set forward, it's a much more sticky situation, which is why our priority is the Jorgensen-Cohen priority is removing those barriers so that eventually we don't need those kinds of regulations.
I might come back to that one later and ask you to elaborate even a little bit more on businesses that say share infrastructure or something like that. But for now, I'm going to move on to the next question.
I got 1 elaboration left.
Yeah, 1 more or a skip.
I don't want to skip though. Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Has the war on drugs? You get 1 skip or 1 elaboration left. Just 1.
Okay.
Has the war on drugs been good for the country in any way?
No.
Okay. Another trick question. That's the right answer. Should the United States enact Medicare for all?
No.
Okay. Is Andrew Yang's freedom dividend a good idea? Okay. Are public schools raising children properly and educating them well? It's a loaded question. Okay. Do you think some
No repeatedly in elaboration or?
No, that's okay.
Good. Okay.
We're nearing the end here. We're in the final stretch, so you could make it.
Okay. All right.
Do you think
I
some?
feel like I can make it.
Yeah, you can. Do you think some unions are too strong and should be dismantled or legislated against?
I have to elaborate on this. I think that public employee unions are often mostly a shell game where taxpayer money is used to allow people to advocate for more taxpayer money. I believe that the government should not be picking winners and losers in the market of labor, including in deciding whether or not someone should be able to do work within a certain field without having to join a labor union. So it's certainly not that there should be regulations against unions, but that there shouldn't be regulations saying that people have to be a member of a union in order to be able to do a certain line of work or whatever.
All right. Very well said. But there are 6 questions left, and no skips and no elaborations.
The final stretch. 6 questions. My God.
You were more than halfway through. It was the final stretch.
It's not a final stretch.
Okay, fine. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of leeway. It depends on what Peyton
No,
thinks.
go ahead. I'm gonna play your game.
Okay, all right.
beat this.
Do you believe global warming is real?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think global warming is an apocalyptic issue? Like a really bad issue. So no? Okay.
Apocalyptic, no.
Okay. Should religious institutions be forced to approve of gay marriage?
No.
Okay. Should there be any repercussions for government whistleblowers? Okay. This now you're really in the final stretch here. Only 3 more questions, so hopefully I'm giving you some hope
That
there.
would be the final stretch. Yes, thank you. That would be the final stretch.
Do you support the Equal Rights Amendment? If you don't support it as is, you can just say no. That's fine.
As is, no.
Okay. Do you think there should be a minimum wage? Okay, last question. Should students return to school in the fall or should they continue distance learning? Well, I guess I should phrase it in a yes or no, but those are your 2 options.
I don't know if this counts as a skip, but I don't know. I don't.
Well, I'll give it to you because it's a bit too early to tell because we don't know how things are going to play out, I guess.
Yeah, I truly don't know what they should be doing coming in the fall. I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I don't know should have been an answer there because you're asking me what someone should do and I don't know.
no, I think that's fair.
Whatever litigating body there is for this type of thing.
I think that's fair. What do you think, Peyton?
I think that's fair too. But good job, Spike. That was all our questions.
Thank you.
I would say the guy who wins the no bullshit.
I think he's the first winner of the No Bullshit Award, the very first.
Nice.
First
He
participant.
did it.
Let's ignore that.
Oh. Okay. Well, no, I'm still the first winner, and no one can ever take that away from me. I'm the first winner.
No one can take that.
Mm-hmm.
Spike, I want to shift to something because we do have a bit of a surprise for you that.
Oh, I have to get those. Hold on. Yeah. Let me bring those up.
We'll talk about the screen in the video, but we recently took pictures for our website, and as you know, there was a bit of a controversy over a certain picture you took. It's actually your Discord profile picture, and we
I was
decided
gonna say this isn't really a hidden picture, yeah.
Yeah, we decided to reenact that for you and show you our reenactment of the photo.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to turn off my camera, and I'll turn on screen share if it'll let me. Hello, Discord.
This
No?
doesn't always participate, but while he's trying to do that, or he might have already done it. Oh no. Well, while he's doing that, I do want to ask you a question. So obviously, you and Joe Jorgensen are different people. You guys ran your campaigns very differently. I mean, you were running for vice presidential, not presidential, but still, you were running on a dual ticket with Vermin Supreme. I wanted to ask you, where do you think your beliefs and Joe Jorgensen's differ, and do you think that conflict is, good for the campaign? Do you think it helps empower the campaign by giving it a diverse messaging, or what are your kind of thoughts on that?
So in terms of policy, there's a disagreement between us in terms of actual policy, what we want to see going forward in terms of changes to government. I don't know of many of them. Certainly not on the big stuff. We want to end the wars. We want to bring the troops home. We want to end the war on drugs. We want to end the war on guns. We want to end the war on sex work. We want to get government out of education so that the access to education and the cost of it go down. We want to get the government out of healthcare so that the cost of healthcare goes down and the cost of the social safety net services like Medicare and Medicaid and things like that also go down so they can be more affordable. We agree with coming up with a transitory plan to get Americans off of Social Security without taking away the checks from the people who rely on it now. We are looking to remove the barriers and the burdens and the impositions that the Republicans and Democrats have unleashed on us in their total and exclusive control of government, and replacing those bad, centrally planned, arbitrarily defined, and crony-friendly ideas with common sense libertarian solutions. So in terms of that, there's not really any difference between us. The only real difference between us is just presentation, which is a good thing. We complement each other, and it allows us to reach out to all sorts of different types of voters. Joe obviously has a more traditional presentation, something that appeals mostly to people that are looking for a return to normalcy and a sense of a return of sense of decency to the White House, and the people who want kind of an end to the chaos that they're seeing. And then I am able to reach out to entire generations of people who feel completely left behind by this system, and in many times don't care if the entire thing burns down. And I'm able to reach out to them with somewhat more edgy and topical campaigning for them, and reaching out to where they are. And bringing them in using that kind of messaging that's friendly to them. But ultimately, we're going back to the same platform and the same policies, really just a Libertarian Party platform on all different subjects. So there's not really a conflict there in terms of our policies. They're pretty much exactly the same.
Okay.
And I do have to
So,
and by the way, I do have to say, I don't know if it's as loud on your end. Peyton, if you can mute yourself when I'm talking, because it's louder in my ear than my own talking, so I'm having some difficulty. But yeah, and so just moving forward, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
so there's not really much difference in opinion between you and Joe, is what you're telling us. Just
Not
you're on the same page, really.
for the most part. I mean, I'm
Okay.
certain there are things that we may disagree on the margins, but for the most part, I mean, we're pretty much, and ultimately on anything we disagree on, I would have to largely defer to her, because this is her ticket. This is
Right.
not the Jorgensen Cohen co-presidential ticket. It's the president-vice president ticket.
I get that. So I did actually figure out how to share my screen now.
Okay.
Here we go. So we did this. So that's my personal portrait that I got of me trying to imitate your pose. But oh, you're not seeing it?
I don't see. I just see the little boxes moving.
Oh, Discord isn't loading for you? Oh man. Peyton, do you see it?
Yeah, I see it. You might want to send them into the chat, and maybe he can see them that way.
All right. Okay. You keep talking. I will download them, and I'll send them in the chat.
I'll give them some more questions while you figure that out. But so the next one I wanted to ask you about is more about, you talked about campaigning, and I'm really glad you did. So I wanted to ask you about, what do you think are the most important issues for you and Joe to be campaigning on? Like which are going to be the most topical going into 2020, and the ones that voters care about the most?
Well, the most topical ones that we're seeing are pretty obvious. The pandemic and the lockdowns that are related to it. And I think we're seeing now that there's a resurgence in new cases of COVID-19, and a subsequent retightening of some of the restrictions from the state governments. I think this is something that was not a one-time thing. I think it's something we're going to be dealing with for months, and maybe even years. Oh, that's beautiful.
The other photo isn't sending because it's too powerful for Discord.
It's too powerful. That's fair. That makes sense. By the way, that's the sound of my dog coming in, so please ignore him. But yeah, so that would be one of them. Another one is the other protests that we've seen that have happened as a result of the growing brutality, police brutality and the militarization of the police. And so our other priorities would be, for example, ending the war on drugs, and bringing the troops home and ending the harm that's being done there. Getting government out of healthcare. Did you give me a specific number of things, or were you just saying things in general that are the most?
Yeah, I'm just talking about in general what you think are the most important issues for your campaign, Joe's campaign. I guess it's both of your guys' campaign, but you guys to hit on for 2020 that voters care about the most. And I think you're hitting it on the nail with which ones voters care about and which ones are important.
Ending the wars, getting ending the war on drugs, getting government out of healthcare, and now obviously the most topical stuff is dealing with the making sure that the COVID-19 pandemic freeing up. Part of what happens with freeing up healthcare isn't just that it lowers costs and increases access, but it also empowers people in the medical sector to better treat things like COVID-19 and be more responsive to that. And we can talk more about that in a bit, about how the restrictions from the CDC, they actually blocked medical workers from being able to test and treat for COVID-19 for the first 6 to 8 weeks that it was here. So that's a perfect example of that.
So I've got sorry to interrupt here, but I've got the ultimate high-tech solution here. I decided to just print out the photo that you couldn't see and just hold it in front of my camera. And I think, as you can see, Peyton does a much better job with the pose than I did.
No, I can't see your camera though.
You can't? What's going on? My camera share is turned on.
I don't know. I'm both of you. I'm getting the little squares.
Really? So you can't see either of us?
Yeah, sometimes Discord does that. We'll make sure to get it to you.
Yeah. All right. We'll send it to you afterwards.
Well, what I'll do, I'll pretend that it looks like oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I'm so overpowered by it.
Thank you. That's what we were hoping for. We hope that you would be proud of us.
Okay.
All right. Sorry for interrupting you for that once again. I've interrupted you guys like 3 times when you're trying to talk about like really important issues.
That's what we do here. We talk about important issues and then interrupt to show a very comedic photo. That's our shtick. But Spike,
It's definitely different than anything else I've seen out there.
Well, I did want to ask you another question, and this one is about the vice presidential debates. Now, Joe Jorgensen made a very, very great milestone in fundraising to get closer and closer to actually getting into the debates with the Republicans and Democrats. But what a lot of people forget is that there's also a vice presidential debate where the vice presidential candidates also get a debate. I want to ask you about that debate and what you would do in that situation going up against Mike Pence and whoever Joe Biden picks to be his candidate.
Probably Kamala Harris. I mean, it's like you said, we've talked a lot about the fact that if we can get Joe Jorgensen on that debate stage, I think it's over. I think Donald Trump and Joe Biden, 2 men who can barely form a coherent sentence between the two of them, and more importantly, are part and parcel and perfect personifications and emblematic of everything that is wrong with government, and it personally have been involved in the very policies that have created the problems that we're facing right now. And then in between them is a brilliant self-made entrepreneur in Joe Jorgensen, a woman who's ready to lead from day one, someone who's a senior lecturer who's able to break down complex concepts in ways that relate and connect with everyday Americans and demonstrate how the Republicans and Democrats, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, have created the problems that we're facing and made them worse, and how she and our libertarian common sense solutions are the solution out of those things. Now, you have me in between Mike Pence and probably Kamala Harris. So, ultimately, again, it's the same thing. You have 2 people that are, emblematic of what is wrong with politics in this country. You have Mike Pence, who has, governed as a big government statist his entire career, and you have Kamala Harris, who is one of the most brutal prosecutors in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who, now she's talking about, Black Lives Matter. It didn't seem to matter when she was locking up record numbers of Black lives and putting criminal records on them for the rest of their life to go through the war on drugs and to put single mothers in jail for truancy, for their teenage children being truant. This was a brutal prosecutor. So, I look forward to asking Mike Pence if he still thinks the government should electrocute gay people to try to cure them, or ask Kamala Harris about that time when she withheld exculpatory evidence in a capital murder case, where she illegally withheld evidence that she knew would prove a man innocent, that she was trying to have executed death row, even after a judge ordered her to release the evidence. And I would look forward to asking her how that isn't attempted murder, morally, if not legally. And also, by the way, that's a perfect example of why we need to end qualified immunity. Qualified immunity doesn't just allow abusive police officers to not be held accountable, which punishes good policing and encourages and incentivizes bad policing. It also allows prosecutors and government officials and politicians to do openly harmful things as long as they decide that it's perfectly reasonable for them to be doing what they're doing. But going back to the question about the debates, I think I'll run circles around them. I think they are both used to, and Donald Trump and Joe Biden are used to the typical Republican rope-a-dope. So the Republican says to the Democrat, you think this, but yet you also think this. What a hypocrite you are. And then the Democrat goes, oh, yeah? Well, you think this, but you also think this. What a hypocrite you are. You're terrible. You're terrible. And I'll get to sit in the middle and go, yeah, you're both terrible hypocrites. And here's everything the two of you have done wrong together. And here's how libertarian solutions will get us out of the mess that you two and your parties have created.
I really look forward to seeing that day, and I wish you all the luck in getting on that debate stage. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give you the chance to go back to some of those speed questions that we did and elaborate on those, because I know that you wanted to get some of those. I sent them all in the chat, but while you read though, I want to go back to the question that had something to do with private entities trusting the environment. I think it was. So removing government regulations. You know, when you remove natural monopolies, or any kind of monopoly that the government's created, what would you do? Say, the ideal world is that there's lots of competition, lots of services, lots of things that people can choose from, right? But what's the libertarian solution to, say, shared infrastructure, like, say, water or power or things like that? How do you create competition where you're not sabotaging the other company?
So you're talking about like the tragedy of the commons type of situation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here, the short answer to it is that when you allow a market to innovate, you allow people to work voluntarily with each other in a combination of cooperation and competition, and removing the coercion so that people can just simply work together and in a spirited, if friendly, or at least voluntary competition with each other for goods and services, that allows innovation to happen within the market. So, for example, the Malthusians have told us for centuries now that, starting with Malthus, I forget his first name, said that if we didn't stop having enough more people, that we were about to run out of food. That there was just, we had already reached the peak amount of farmland, and that we were just soon, that there were going to be too many people, and we were going to starve to death. This was I forget how long ago, but quite a while ago. That I think Thomas Malthus said this, and the Malthusians have continued to warn against the coming food crisis, that we're all going to run out of the very resource that we need every day in order to live. And yet, starvation is at all-time lows, even as the population skyrockets, and even as the available amount of usable land for agriculture continues to diminish because of the innovations in the market, which allow for greater technology to greater utilize that land and to greater expand our sources for food, that land and that water and everything else, and to greater expand our ability to get food. So here we are, perfect example of that. And that's true with any other shared thing. We all share, for lack of a better word, water and air and everything else. And instead of looking at it as a sort of zero-sum economics applied to resources, the way to look at it is, in a market that will create a demand, if there is a demand for something, water, air, clean air, enough land to be able to use for various, uses like agriculture and things like that. If there's a demand for it, then there will be a supply for it, because the demand comes with price signals. People saying, I'm willing to pay this much for it because that's how much it's worth to me. And as the demand goes up, price goes up. As the price goes up, the number of motivated providers goes up to go and enter that market and get their share of that, which creates what we call a price equilibrium. There's two price equilibriums happening here. One, as more and more suppliers come in, it brings the price down because there's more options, and they're having to compete with each other to provide you with the best value. So that keeps the price level. Also, there's the price equilibrium of if what you're providing costs too much for most people, you're not gonna have enough customers. You have to bring it down, which means you have to either restrict the supply, or greatly increase the supply to actually be able to meet everyone's needs and provide it at a price that they can afford. So whether it's water, potable water, air, anything else, any resource, simply allowing innovation to do what it does, and people who are experts in those various fields. And this goes to healthcare, education, any kind of resource, but including natural resources, simply allowing the market to do what it does, to work based off of the price signals of supply and demand. Will it be a perfect solution? Will there never be shortages? Will there never be people who are going without? No, of course not. We don't have that now. And we have all the problems that come with central planning now. But simply allowing the market to do what it does will provide much more much better access and much more fair and equitable and affordable and innovative solutions than we would ever get from bad centrally planned decisions from big government statists in the Republican and Democrat parties.
Have you ever considered becoming a professor or a teacher of some kind? Because you have a way of explaining things. Like that was very well said. Of course, I totally knew it already because I'm big brain. I'm econ brain. I knew all that, of course, but
of course, I can tell. I can tell from your picture of you with the shirt. That was an econ brain picture right there. I totally saw it. Totally saw it. So this is kind of an educational thing. The way I always looked at what I've done with Muddy Waters and what I'm doing now with this campaign, I have always leveraged this with the idea of sharing the message of liberty and free markets and non-aggression and peace and prosperity and decentralization and removal of systemic institutions that have been put in place to stratify people based on their demographics and based on their identities and based on their income and based on their political affiliation and based on a variety of factors to keep them all divided against each other so that they don't step back and see, wait a second. We're fighting each other. It turns out they're the only people we should be fighting against. They're the only people we should be stopping. The Republicans, the Democrats, the big government statists, and the well-heeled, powerful cronies who put them in power so that they could preserve their market share, where a small relative handful of people have control of almost all of the wealth. Like what, 80% of the wealth is owned by a small handful of people? And that's not accidental. Nor is it the result of just those people being so much better than everyone else. They've created a system that keeps us down. And so what I have done, what I want to do, and what I am doing in this is leveraging this, be able to reach people and to explain, it ain't about left and right. It ain't about, about Republican versus Democrat. It's about the fact that a centrally planned entity, a monopoly of violence that is being spurred on by not just big business, but a small relative handful of incredibly powerful people for no other purpose. This whole system has been created to keep you in your place, tell you what to do, rob you of your property, your opportunities, your self-determination, and your self-ownership for no other reason than to preserve their own power and influence and wealth. These libertarians believe that you own yourself. Because you own yourself, you own your life and your body. Because you own your body, you own your labor. And because you own your labor, you own the product of your labor, your property. Those things are something that you have the exclusive right to enjoy and own as you see fit. You can give it to others. You can share it with others. You can lend it to others. You can sell it to others. But those things are yours. And we recognize your self-ownership and believe that we should not aggress against each other. Not just because it's morally wrong to take from each other and to try to take people's stuff and harm them, but also because it doesn't work. If I can take from the two of you and everyone else that's watching and listening to this whenever I see fit, I'm not going to be a good steward of what I have because I can just take more. I'm not going to make good choices. Why would I bother? Why would I spend the time? Cost-benefit analysis. Why would I spend the time making good choices if I can simply take from all of you as I see fit? And the rest of y'all aren't going to necessarily be the best stewards of what you have because you know I could come and take it at any time. And what are the bad policies of the governments and of the Republicans and Democrats, of the big government statist system that they have set up, but a system whereby they have claimed the exclusive authority to take from all of us and order us all around and aggress upon us as they see fit. So my purpose of this campaign is to get Joe Jorgensen into the White House first and foremost, but also in doing so to educate people as to why this is the way forward, and then to help change the cultural conversation away from the two same arguments of how much bigger government should be and how much more control it should have over our lives, and moving instead towards how much less control it should have, how much better we would be doing if those barriers that those powerful people put in place weren't there.
And that's honestly a perfect transition to our last question that we had for you. And unless you want to quickly expand upon any of the other speed questions.
Let me go through these real quick. So are you pro-life, pro-choice, or neither? I think that the Libertarian Party platform says it perfectly. If, we all can have very well intentioned and good faith, strongly held beliefs on this subject, and that we believe that the government should stay out of it, and here's why. If you give an embryo same rights as the rest of us, if you say that an embryo has the same rights as the rest of us, that does ban abortion. It also bans in vitro fertilization because of the number of embryos that are being created. It makes it so that when a woman has a miscarriage, there has to be a wrongful death investigation because, again, a constitutionally protected human being has died, and there has to be an investigation of their death to make sure that she didn't do anything potentially negligent that she could be charged for. Imagine having a miscarriage and the devastation of that, or an ectopic pregnancy and the devastation of that, and having the police come and investigate it to make sure you didn't do anything that you can be arrested for. It would also mean that if you were someone who had many miscarriages and was just trying so hard, you and your partner were trying so hard to have a child, you're told by the law, no, you can't do it. If you try again, we'll try you for attempted homicide or negligent homicide because you've already demonstrated the number of other people that you have killed in the result of your trying to get pregnant. It would mean that people who are high risk for pregnancy would be told that they have to be closely monitored or maybe that they can't get pregnant. That is not a world we'd want to live in. And if you set the time that the moment that a fetus or an embryo becomes a person with rights, anywhere but the very moment of conception, you are being every bit as arbitrary as any person who is right now deciding when it's a person or when it's just an extension of their body and they can remove it. So as difficult of a subject as it is, we fall on the side of saying that is best left as a decision to the conscience of the person who is making that decision. It's a tough one, but
just as a reference, we've got about 10 minutes left before you have that thing that you need to do.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that. Do you believe our justice system works for everyone? It works for almost no one. Do you believe the government can be trusted to protect the environment? Absolutely not. All they do is protect. The EPA protects big businesses from being sued, and it also externalizes the cost of the cleanup to us, the taxpayers, who just had dumped in our rivers. Do you believe private entities can be trusted? Oh, I already dealt with that. Should prostitution be legal? Yes. When you create black markets, it just harms the people that are involved in that market and puts a criminal element in it that isn't needed. Do you support charter schools? I support people having more choice in schools. My concern about charter schools is that it feels like the potential for the public school system to slowly wade its way into private schooling and become its main customers, so that private schooling eventually becomes de facto public schooling. But in general, I support homeschooling, private schooling. I support getting government out of schools. Do you think there are limits to what can be done for the sake of national security? I think that most things that are done have absolutely nothing to do with national security. They're about military.
It's about political reasons.
Political reasons,
yeah.
keeping people in fear,
yep.
Subjecting them to infringements on their rights and their privacy. Should businesses be allowed to discriminate? But that one I did. Has the war on drugs been good for the country in any way? I mean, I guess if you work for a police or prison contractor, yes. Otherwise, no. Should the United States enact Medicare for all? No, it should get out of healthcare so that the cost can go down as much as 80 or 90%. Is Andrew Yang's freedom dividend a good idea? This was a tough one. Andrew Yang recognizes that our system is a mess, and that, for example, with this, bailout was a microcosm of how government treats us. They give us a few $100 of our own money that they stole from us, and they give the rest to incredibly wealthy and powerful people. And so the idea behind UBI is that you give everyone the same amount of money. The problem is what happens over time is that becomes hyperinflationary, and 1,000 becomes 1,500, becomes 2,000, becomes 5,000, becomes 10,000. Then you end up with like a situation in countries where their currency became worthless. And so I believe that we need to end the Fed and switch to free market banking.
Now, Spike, we have about time for you to elaborate on one more of those, and then we got one more. So.
Repercussions. Global warming, I think, again, best handled by the market. Most of global warming is happening as a result of distortions in the market, where things are being made on the other side of the planet and brought over here to get around the regulations that they themselves impose to keep their competitors from being able to compete with them.
Okay.
I think largely minimum wage. The problem is the Fed. Your wages are deriding slowly over time because the Fed is making your money worthless, and so you get it out of the hands of government. Make your currency be provided by free market providers who have a vested interest in your currency gaining value over time. So I think that's it.
Okay.
I think that's
Very well said. Our last question for you, before we wrap things up is, what do you think about third parties in general, their viability for the future, and what your chances are, your campaign's chances are in general?
So, what are our chances if we get Joe Jorgensen on our on that debate stage and me on that debate stage? I think that the odds are that we will win it. I think that it will be such a stark contrast. The two, sides that they've been told these are the only sides that are viable to vote for. I think that'll all get blown out of the water when Joe Jorgensen is on there and when I'm on there, and they can see, oh wow, this is so much of a better option. What were we thinking? And so I think our odds are very good in that way. And if we can't get on the debate stage, if we're kept off, if we're excluded from the debate stage, I think at the very least there's still a good chance that there's still some chance we could win. And at the very least, there's a great chance we are almost certain to do better than any other libertarian or third party has done it, and the Libertarian Party's ever done, and any third party has done in recent memory even. The idea of third parties, we're often told that third parties are spoiling the vote. Well, if the two other options suck and they're just largely not really a lesser evil of each other, then who are they spoiling the vote for? I'd say they're spoiling the vote for us if we're going to talk about it that way. You own your vote. You voting for what you believe is not spoiling anything for anyone else. If they wanted your vote, they should have sucked less. And then, the other thing is that it's a vote thrown away. Well, again, if your other options suck, then I would say a vote thrown away is voting for the same people who created these problems, are promising that this time, finally, they will fix it. If you just vote for them one more time, the only way you could not throw your vote away is to vote for someone who is completely departing from what the other two options have been giving you, exclusive control with their exclusive control of government, and instead, bringing things to a completely different way. And I think that third parties are the only viable way to get out of the problems we have.
Spike, I could not agree more. That basically you went over everything that Peyton and I believe about third parties in like under a minute. That was pretty incredible, to be honest. You highlighted all the problems of the two-party system, and then perfectly explained why third parties are the solution in like 45 seconds. That was amazing. But that's all the questions that we have for you today.
That's great.
Yes, you were the first one.
At 1,000.
Yep. We were really grateful that you could make it for us today. I know the scheduling was a bit tricky a little bit, but we're very glad that you could join us. Peyton, do you have any final words?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. It's a great honor to have you on. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Joe on as well, but at least we got to you. That's great that we got to you. I just wanted to say,
come on, man. Are you trying to say he's not as good as Joe?
Well, no, definitely not.
At least we got Spike. Nothing else. We got Spike, which is okay.
No, you were great, dude. You were great.
No, and I greatly appreciate it. And folks, if you liked what you heard, I invite you to go to joj2020.com. That's joj2020.com. If you'd like to join our team, we have a volunteer form you can fill out. If you can make a contribution, that would be greatly appreciated. In fact, we have the final day of the 38 for Spike campaign. Sunday was my 38th birthday, and so when I was just singing happy birthday, it was to myself as well, even though I called myself Peyton. But anyway, if you go to 38forspike.com, if you were listening to this and thinking, what could I possibly give this man for his birthday? You go to 38forspike.com, make a $38 donation to the Jorgensen Cohen campaign. Really, you can give any amount you want, but 38's a suggested amount because it's a nice number. It's my age. 38forspike.com and give. That would be greatly appreciated. And tell your friends why you support the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign and the common sense libertarian solutions that we are providing to end the problems that we are facing from the Republicans and Democrats. And I greatly appreciate your time to be on Alt-Centrist, and I am thankful for here. And I won it.
You won. You won.
Won your contest. I won it. I'm the winner.
So that's it for today, everybody. If you enjoyed, if you agreed with, if you support any of these messages that you heard today, please do share this video. Please share this around. Give Spike and Joe all the love. They deserve it. I mean, who else? Who else? I mean, come on. Biden, Trump. All right. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.